Orgasmic enlightenment, where the sexual and spiritual come together. I'm Kim Anami, and I'm a holistic sex and relationship coach and a vaginal weightlifter. In this show, we explore all things intimate. I believe that our sexual energy is life force, creative energy, and we can use it to shape our worlds, strengthen our relationships, and self-actualize. I blend the most avant-garde information from neuroscience, ancient sexual practices like Tantra and Taoism, to renegade wellness modalities to show you how to create gourmet sex in your lives. Come one, come all. Freebirthing twins. Surprise! In today's episode, I am speaking with Emma Johnston, the co-founder of the Reconnected. Emma reached out to me about a year ago after the birth of her fourth and fifth children, and she told me about how she had taken the Well Fucked Woman salon earlier that year. And she shared with me that she had just birthed her twin boy and girl at home on her own with her partner and her 3 other children present. No one else. Her entire pregnancy was wild and free, meaning she didn't consult with any witch doctors or meddling wives or use any machines to tell her what was happening inside of her own womb. Instead, she listened to her own body and her intuition to guide her through the entire process. So I get that that may not be the place that everyone is at where they have the confidence to do that, but I truly believe that this is the way. My work in the sexy mama realm is to help women shed the fears and the programming they've taken in that reinforces their helplessness in the pregnancy and birth process, and the idea that they need an outside source or a machine to tell them the truth of their own bodies. My work is to help them restore their own inner knowing and confidence. Every animal innately has this, including us. We couldn't survive. No species could survive if we didn't. We've just been convinced that we don't have this. One of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this topic is so women and couples can have the most powerfully transformative and self-actualizing experiences of their lives. And because I've seen the toll that it takes on women, couples, and their relationships when they have what typically would be a traumatic birth experience, which is the norm in a hospital setting, versus the kind of defining, cataclysmic, self-actualizing, transcendent, life-changing, activating your deepest wisdom and spiritual intuition that happens when you have an independent, autonomous birth, where you rely on your own sources within. And I even liken this to the concept of a spiritual initiation, that's what the pregnancy and birth process truly is, this sense of you going inside, slaying your own demons, finding your own blocks, and coming through the other side victorious. So women birthing in their own power get to have this experience, as a reward for doing this kind of work. Women who give their power away to an external authority during birth do not. Instead, they walk away traumatized, confused, and grief-stricken. And they have no idea why, because there is no outlet for them to be acknowledging the trauma that what happened within their birth. People will pat them on the head and say, "You're so lucky, your baby's alive, you're healthy." I mean, maybe. Maybe it depends how many surgeries you sustained, how many drugs you took, how many things were given and done to your baby to define what health truly is and what it will look like in the years to follow. But they don't have that, and so most people don't make the connection. Have a great episode called The Real Reason Why Couples Stop Having Sex After Children, which details this, that it's all about this birth trauma and the fact that they've gone so far off course in the birth experience rather than it being an event that unites them forever. To be clear, I'm not shaming or blaming any women who have fallen victim to the propaganda and lies of the allopathic system. I am definitely blaming anyone who perpetuates those lies and is responsible for spreading them. The reality is, healing can only happen when we acknowledge the trauma that's taken place. And though it might be hard to do that, there's lots of power in acknowledging what's happened. And then even if it's too late for you, meaning you're finished having children at this stage of your life, you can be a voice to spread the message forward of what's really possible in birth. And if you're still having babies, you have many an opportunity to do it over again. And people often say, well, they always say when they then have a more empowered birth experience, how it really helps to wipe out the previous experiences that they had. So in this interview, Emma touches on so many amazing points in our conversation, which reflect the core essence of my philosophy, like the Anami guarantee. Everyone can. Everyone has these abilities. And if you aren't realizing them, that's because something is in the way. Trauma, beliefs, conditioning, these are the elements to remove so that we can all get back to the innate, birthright, knowing and wisdom that we all have. Once that stuff is out of the way, we see our intuition and our connection to our bodies deepen, and all of that divine functioning that is available to us, that channeling of the eons of wisdom that is within our very cells, is flooding our consciousness, and we have access to it. A great example of the programming that we all get versus the truth of what our bodies are designed to do is the concept of pushing in birth. Name one fictional movie or television depiction of birth that doesn't include a crazed, bleacher-filled crowd of people yelling at a woman to push, push, push her baby out. Pushing is one of the worst things that you can do in birth. It's the antithesis of surrender, of letting the body do what it does. When we do surrender and open, the body takes over, and something called the fetal ejection reflex happens, where the body gives a great heave and catapults the baby out. Yes, indeed, the body pushes itself. When women push, and you see the great metaphor here of not letting go of control and refusing to surrender, they often end up tearing their vaginas and creating prolapse scenarios that will haunt them for the rest of their lives, particularly if they don't take up a jade egg practice in the future. But when she just surrenders and opens, the body can get to work and do what it does beautifully and gracefully. In Emma's birth story, she shares what happened when the fetal ejection reflex kicked in and her babies literally shot out of her. Emma also talks about following her own inner guidance when there potentially was a tricky moment during her birth and where that led her. So many great themes in this conversation. Well fucked All-Stars! Hello, Emma. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I actually love your podcast. I love how diverse it is, and I listened to quite a lot of it just before I had my twins, actually. I went on a deep dive on the podcast.
Diverse? Diverse in what way?
Just about sex and babies and relationships and homeschooling and just kind of all the things that I'm into. So, yeah.
Love it. Well, you're into something that I'm very into, which is the whole free birthing idea, which you've done on a whole other level. So please share your story.
Yeah, well, it's actually almost coming up to a year, which just blows my mind. But I was pregnant last year, due to give birth in October. I thought I had mapped out on my own. And I had a pretty amazing pregnancy. And the part that I don't think you know is I actually signed up for your Well Fucked Woman course just before I fell pregnant. And me and my partner were just kind of rebuilding intimacy. We actually had no plans to have another child.
And you have how many so far?
We have three.
Three
so far,
already.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had home births with all three of the older ones. And
Were they also free births?
they were home births. But my midwife, Melanie Jackson, has her PhD in free birth, so she's very hands off. I've never had any checks or dilation checks, or everything's very hands off. And, just being with yourself and having her there. But I started doing that course, and then me and my partner just started to open up and be with each other way more deeply and intimately. And this energy just came in, and I knew that there was another child there. And I heard the name, actually. I heard the name Phaedra, and I was like, I'm pretty sure there's a girl around. And I think she's coming in. And my partner was like, are you crazy? Do we another kid? Like, that just sounds a bit nuts. But he also felt it as well. And I think he couldn't really say no to the energy that was coming. And so we just kind of went with it. And I just had this really strong sense that we were about to invite a girl into the family. And so we actually just at that point, just when we just started to open up intimately, life was running really smooth. I was thinking, it's actually okay if we have another baby, because, we're in our house, we're sorted, everything's smooth and comfortable. When it hadn't been for the other three, it'd kind of been a bit of a whirlwind, just even financially. And, it was never really the right time. But this time I thought, no, we're sorted, we're grounded, it's all good, like everything will be fine. And then the next week, we had a massive environmental disaster where we live. We had floods, landslides, and my family, me, my partner, and my three kids were trapped behind a landslide for 7 days.
Wow.
Food or water or anything, clean water. There was lots of water, but not clean water. And I just kind of knew. I was like, oh my God, I know that I'm pregnant. I didn't have any tests or anything, but I was like, I know it. And we've just lost our house. Like, we've lost everything. And not only did we lose like the place where we could live, everyone in my area, it was like 100,000 homeless people. So I was just like, what is this? Like, I cannot believe it. And, I was like, have we made just like the craziest decision? But by the blessing of whatever is out there, we were just guided the whole way and supported so beautifully by the community, and ended up landing in a really beautiful place to rest, and my business was going really well. So I was just in my pregnancy. I didn't have to work. I didn't have to, do much else. And I couldn't, because I was so sick. I was so, so violently ill, and I thought I'd actually been water poisoned, because we were siphoning water out of our tank for 7 days, trapped behind the landslide. And I'd never been so sick before, and I really thought it was because a lot of people were really ill from all the dirty water. But mine just never went away. Like, I was just constantly violently sick, and I was taking all the herbs and the remedies. And then it finally ended, and I was about probably 2 months pregnant at the time, and I hadn't really put two and two together yet. I thought I'd just kind of gone through this massive bug whilst being pregnant, and I had fears around, like, is the baby okay? That was a pretty traumatic entrance into conception. Like, is everything cool? But I ended up having a really beautiful pregnancy, and I just decided to do it on my own with my partner. We had a bit of a brief discussion, like, what does it look like? Are we going to get a midwife? Are we going to get a doula? Nothing felt really aligned. My midwife actually lives a lot further away. She wouldn't have been able to join us. I didn't feel to meet anyone else. I had this real feeling of secrecy. Like, I was like, this baby feels really secretive. I had the feeling that it was a girl, but I was like, they're just really secretive. I don't know what it is, but anytime I'd I think maybe I should talk to someone or express about my pregnancy. I just got this full body no, you're fully okay, you're fine. And so I just went through my pregnancy. I actually had a really nice time. We just spent so much time at the beach, so much time just like connecting and being together. And then I went way over. So I thought my baby would have been due, I think, on the 16th of October. That's when I'd kind of mapped it out. And I knew the longest they're going to stay in is to my daughter's birthday on the 28th of October, because there's a bit of a pattern in our family of it's born on the same day. And we got to my daughter's birthday and no show. And I'm like, okay, this baby's sticking around way longer. I didn't have a lot of movement. So I was kind of in a process around who is this baby? Like, they feel so secretive. There's not a lot of movement. My friends would be mapping me all the time, like feeling like, where is like the bum and where is the head? And yeah, it was just we would kind of joke. Imagine if there was two in there, like that would be so funny, like, because I felt so big, but nobody could feel two. We could always kind of get a bum and we could get a head, and they always seemed to be flipping in each direction, but there was never two kicks or two hiccups or anything that would have led me to think that there was two in there. And then, so we went way over my daughter's birthday. And then on the 5th of November, so I think I would have been 43 weeks, I went into labor in the morning. And we just set up the pool in my house. My partner and my kids were there. It started in the morning. So it started pretty non-event, just quite easeful. And I just went into this kind of deep meditative zone. Thankfully, I'd given birth 3 times, so I knew to really hand myself over to the experience and allow myself to just be with everything that was coming. And I'm so glad I'd had those 3 births before, because this one was just unlike any of them. And it was a real call to surrender. I felt really bizarre in my body. The labor sensations were just like so epic. They were right in my back, which I hadn't really had before. So it was like none of the movements that I thought would work would actually work, you know, just moving my hips and getting into these kind of interesting patterns in my body. And I was having this real untanglement in the moment, because I was like, wow, I've actually made the decision to do this completely on my own. So this actually all lands with me. And I was, you know, just kind of moving through this like mental unpeeling and unraveling around. I am doing this totally sovereignly. I'm doing this totally on my own. Like, you know, I'm going to be with this. Okay. There's no one to really reach out to. And I said to my partner at one stage, I said, I think the baby is stuck. I have this feeling like the baby's not moving. I'm not sure what's going on, but thank goodness he is so trusting and trusts me that he just held space for that feeling, helped me to have like a purge around it, like an emotional kind of purge. And then not too long after, he was kind of tracking where my the labor was going, and he thought, no, we've got ages, like this is going to take a lot longer. It's all good, I'll just sit here and massage her. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, my body just opened, like I just went in this full breath of my body, and I had fetal ejection reflex, and my daughter flung out into the pool, made a little wave into the pool. And we all picked her up, and we were saying, my kids were there, and we were like, oh my God, it is Phaedra. It is the girl. It's the girl. You know, we fully thought, wow, she was so present and expressive with who she was way back at conception, that we'd always felt that she was there. And we were all really excited, and she was fully screaming. She was like so pink, so available. And as I had her on my chest, I just looked down at my belly and I could see my stomach had collapsed over the top of the other baby. So there was a very obvious baby there. And I just looked at my partner and I said, I think there's another one in there. And he just goes, okay. And as soon as he said that, my body just opened up again. Like I can't describe it. It's like I had no control over the fetal reflex. It was like my body just opened and outshot legs. And yeah. And we don't remember, because the funny thing is, I had said to my partner the whole pregnancy, whatever you do, just make sure you get the birth time, because I love astrology and human design. So I was like, your one job is just get the birth time. So he did that. He got her birth time. He took a little bit of video footage of us with her. It was all very exciting. And it's so funny looking back on the video because you can fully see Halo in my womb. But we took the video and stuff, and then he'd put his phone down. And then when we'd said that, we don't know what happened in that moment, who took Phaedra, we don't know where she went. We can't remember. But his legs came out, and I just remember Ryan was there, and my instinct was, don't touch him. I just said, don't touch him. He'll be fine. And my partner's like, okay. And then the next wave came, my body opened up, and he came out. And he came out completely blue, gray, not there at all. He was so floppy, I just had this real instinct came over me, this really primal instinct. And in a very quick succession, I just grabbed him. I sucked whatever was in his mouth out with my mouth. I flipped him over and I rubbed him on the back, and we called his name. And it was so interesting that we did this because we didn't have a name for a boy. We hadn't come up. We just knew it was Phaedra, and we'd actually decided if it's a boy, it's Phaedra. If it's a girl, it's Phaedra, because the name was so present. And Ryan had heard the song Halo come over my birth playlist, and he just started saying, come on, Halo, you're here, you're with us, we're with you. And Halo came to it and started to breathe and be there and available. And then we just had these two babies, and we were just sitting in the pool, and my kids, my partner, we were just all in shock. I don't remember what happened from there. My partner said he'd already been thinking at the beginning, how am I going to get her from the pool to the mattress over there with one baby? And then he said, I was just there with two babies, two cords. It was just my goodness, what do we do? But I was so blessed because they were both so radiantly healthy. After Halo had landed and come into his body, he was just so awake, and they were just so present and fully cooked because they were 43 weeks, right. I think. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And I love the references you've made to your own instinct of what to do in those moments, and especially love hearing when the fetal ejection reflex just takes over and does what it's meant to do, which if we're not interfered with, I believe that's what would happen with everybody. But it's amazing to hear that, the way you describe it, your body just opens and you're not
my body anything. Just absolutely opened. And I was reflecting afterwards, I was in a really trance-like psychedelic state before that happened. I was absolutely gone in my own mind. I had this vision that I was walking two kids over a light spectrum when I was in that deep part of labor. But because I wasn't in my conscious mind, I didn't think anything about two kids. I was just oh, I'm walking kids over a light spectrum. I didn't think about, oh no, it's twins. I was just in this really psychedelic state. And then that's when my body just opened. It's like there's no conscious thought about it, zero pushing. Like that baby was going to come out because my body, it's the most unique sensation of just that absolute freedom. And then they just come out. I didn't feel anything. It was just like, boom, eject. It's just wild.
So, how would you describe, like, what do you think prepared you for being able to be really open and to allow that to come through you and surrendering in those moments?
Well, I am a rebirthing breath worker, and have done so much work around being with discomfort, whether that's my own discomfort, emotional, physical, or mental discomfort, and then also being with many thousands of people's discomfort. So I think that's given me a really good foundation for being with what arises and moving into the pain. I have been around a lot of women who really trust birth, and I had to reclaim that myself because I don't come from a family or a paradigm growing up where birth or womanhood or just being a natural human being was ever talked about or shown in any way. So when I first fell pregnant with my first son, I'd never met anyone who had had a home birth. But I knew, I hadn't even started breath work then, but I knew that I wanted to do it at home. I just was like, that's just the weirdest thing to me that we'd go to a hospital. And then because I had that spark of thought, I landed in a random conversation at a cafe with someone who had a home birth. She told me about a book to read, which was Jane Hardwicke Collins' 10 Moons. I read that book. That led me to reach out to a midwife, which then I had my first birth at home, which was up against a lot of kind of, are you crazy? You shouldn't be doing that. And that was 9 years ago too. So this free birth, home birth wasn't quite as prevalent on the internet, as it is now. So that was like kind of my first move. And then having these births at home where my midwife, thank goodness, never touched me or guided me in any sort of way to give birth, gave me a real sense of trust in birth. That I knew I could take a lot deeper with this experience of having a free birth. But there's just so much more information out there now. Like, it's so epic what you can learn from when it comes to this. I read a lot of the books and just what happens in this scenario, what happens in that scenario. But ultimately, I know that when we have an undisturbed birth, we go into a primal part of ourselves that doesn't need any sort of coaching. It's like that just switches on. And I didn't really know what to do with a baby who was totally not present or blue, but my instinct kicked in. It was my partner said he was so inspired but shocked and in awe about the level of calm that I had in that moment. He was like, it was because he had felt oh my God, the baby's blue, like what's going to go on? But he said, he just watched me just go into this absolute mastery around like, this is what it's going to be. It's going to be totally fine. Everything's all good. And that was, I don't know where that came from, but it was just in the moment.
Well, like you say, if a person is left undisturbed, then that's all those instincts are there and intact, right? We think about animals and all the things that they do instinctively, and they're not watching anybody else give birth, really, right? Like they're not around anything. That's all coming from within, like licking their babies and like nursing them, like all of that stuff is pure instinct, which is epic, really.
And if women are left to be alone, it just does take over. Like, and also there is a real surrendering out of the mind. So I knew that I was dealing with the mind at the beginning of the labor because I was having these kind of untanglements around, what was happening, the feeling of the baby being stuck. But I knew that I needed to just get out of the mind and that there was nobody was going to help me in that moment. It was just about surrendering deeper into the sensations of, okay, the baby feels stuck. Where is that in my body? What is happening? So just the ability to get out of my thinking mind, which probably would have made me fear, close up, contract, get the adrenaline. But I knew to just kind of surrender more into the feelings and the sensations. And that's when I went on this like just epic psychedelic journey. Like I wasn't in the space at all.
Tell me more about the psychedelic journey in birth.
So it's like, well, I love that quote about how a woman goes to the stars to get her baby to bring them back down. And I have felt
Who said that?
I don't know who said that. Maybe it was Sunny Carl. She's always got a good way with words, but it's so true. And I've experienced it in all of my labors is there is a moment that it's like you go into the pain and you're with the pain enough that it transmutes into a psychedelic experience. And it's no longer pain that has you wanting to escape. It's like energy and a wave that comes through the body that takes you into an altered state of consciousness. I had it, I had it in all of my labors, and it's especially that transition bit just before they're about to start to move into the birth canal. And I think, I think that's where a lot of women don't actually get to have that experience. They're just made to stay in their mind. And if you stay in your mind, you're not going to be able to access that place. And if you're in a hospital situation and you have people talking to you or wanting to ask things, it's very hard to get into that space. And all of my births, I've been in the dark, left alone, music, because music is a huge tool for me. I love music. And just being left to surrender into myself. That's why I've been able to access that zone.
Yeah, exactly. And so what would you say were parallels for you? Because the whole theme of the sexual journey and being, let's say, a well-fucked woman and having cervical orgasms is the same level of very deep, profound surrender, where you have to get out of the mind and into the body and trust, right? And you hit these places that feel like chasms and voids, and you have to be able to dive into them and go forward. So did you notice parallels between your sexual explorations and what that could bring you into your birth experience?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the real intimacy of my partner, I know that, we've been together for, I think, almost 15 years now. And we've been through each birth. And then just to be able to totally surrender to someone and completely trust, essentially he was my midwife in this birth with the twins because he was the one who was there. He was out, making toast for the kids, doing the pool, feeding the dog. He was not completely in the room because he left me be on my own. But there was, like sex, like our parenting together, the level of trust that I was able to have in that moment, to even if I was to have these, purge these kind of fears, that he wouldn't hook into that fear and create a bigger problem. He was able to actually just listen to what I was expressing and trust that I would make a call if I needed to make a call, but he didn't pressure anything. So, yeah, I can see the intimacy of our relationship was a big thing as well, like how it has impacted just that freedom to completely trust that it's just us in that space. Just feeling into the openness, the openness sexually, and the intimacy with myself, the intimacy with my own body, my own freedom of expression when it comes to birth, feeling completely uninhibited to be in that really primal nakedness, like full exposure, which I'm actually so grateful that my kids have seen quite a few times, is just this really primal part of me when I am in that birth space. And it's just this real openness, that I know that I needed to embody in order to bring these babies in a really sovereign way, was to feel completely uninhibited in my own physical body, which I'm really proud of, because I don't come from a culture of that at all. I come from a diet culture and a very an English kind of, you need to be repressed, essentially, not very sexually expressive at all, very closed down. Nobody talked about sex, menstruation, none of it ever. So I'm proud that I've been able to reclaim that by doing intimacy work, self-reflection, my breathwork practice, and having these births where I've been able to be fully expressive in my own body.
Did you say come from diet culture?
Yeah, just women who were just always on diets, never loved their body, always had an issue, would never be fully expressed in their body. They wouldn't be open and vulnerable in that sense. I was never breastfed. My mum never put her breast in my mouth. And I worried about that when I was first having kids, because I was like, well, what am I up against? But no, I'm actually deeply instinctual, and breastfeeding has been the most natural, amazing, awesome thing for me. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I would say that the world is so open and available for people to free birth now. The energy has changed within the landscape of the medical field. The towers are crumbling in that sense, and I think people are really becoming aware of their own authority and their own ability to do things differently. And if you have that inkling that you want to do it, there is so much support out there, so many amazing people, incredible stories, and just make sure that you have safe people in your space. I didn't even tell people that I was free birthing and wild birthing. Nobody knew. I was blessed because it was my fourth child that not a lot of people asked, because they just, I'd had 3 kids, so it wasn't a big topic of conversation about what I was going to do. But I kept everything really quite private. I kept it really in the insular of me and my partner and my friends, who are very supportive and very open and willing to hold space for this type of stuff. But I just didn't share it with people that I knew weren't going to hold the same level of frequency. And I want to give people permission that they don't need to get permission from people to birth the way that they want to birth. It's actually a really good practice over your pregnancy to, claim your sovereignty just even with your words. You don't need, not everyone needs to know your decision. You don't need to justify it, just like you're not going to have to justify the choices that you make when your child comes here, because you're going to come up against choices that you're going to have to make intuitively. And that practice can start at the very beginning of conception, of making intuitive choices that maybe not everyone else will agree with, because that's going to be a pretty consistent thing popping up if you're having a child consciously and you want to make decisions based on your own instinct. It's really good to get that practice at the beginning because it's going to happen. And I'm so glad I didn't share my wild pregnancy and free birth plans with people that weren't going to fully hold it to the highest regard, because I I had a pregnancy that was fairly stress-free. I didn't have to come up against any kind of dogma, conditioning, fear-mongering, but it was mostly because I just stayed in my own zone, did my own thing.
And trusted. Yeah. I mean, how else do you think that you've cultivated that trust in your body and yourself if you didn't come from that in your own lineage? Well, lineage, I mean, Jeanette, like, sure,
Yeah,
it's
my
in
own
there, but I
ancestor.
mean, like,
Yeah.
the imprinting that you would have gotten directly.
Well, all of my rebirthing, I have a master in rebirthing breathwork. So I've done a lot of breathwork, and the breathwork style that I am trained in is rebirthing. So it's reclaiming the signature of your own breath pattern back to its natural state of being, which is releasing and unfurling the trauma that has happened since my own conception. And I've done a lot of deep work into that, and a lot of reclaiming, rewiring, and new agreements for my lineage. New agreements that I'm making towards my own family line, what I'm bringing in, untangling a lot of the grief and separation of not being breastfed, or being put into school, being medically tampered with as a child. I reclaimed a lot of my experience around that through my own deep work, and I rewired that and made some really conscious decisions to do things very differently. So because I made those decisions, the world has given me that. It's shown me a way. And the best thing about it is, because I have chosen to do that, and I haven't, kind of blown up my family relationships. I had to move through probably many years, I'd say 15 plus years of my family and even my in-laws thinking that I was quite insane, and very weird for the things that I do. But since COVID and just the exposure that's happened to a lot of people, now my family and my in-laws, they have a lot of respect for how I do things, and they trust that I make the right decision for me and my kids. So it's kind of come full circle into just feeling accepted for being my kind of pioneering self for my own family. Yeah.
That's amazing. And what about your own self body love? Like when you talked about, say, coming from a diet culture and a lot of that reflection around of constant dissatisfaction with the way the body is. Like, how did you come to, I'm assuming, or did you come to a place of loving your body, that love and trust and cultivation
Yeah.
of that?
Well, so I actually come from diet culture of my own, female lineage, but then I was a full-time ballerina, which was absolute hyper pressure on the perfection of body. And then I became a model, which was a whole other layer deeper of perfectionism around the body. And I lived overseas with supermodels and saw hyper dysfunctional relationships with physicality. So people that were considered to be the most beautiful people in the world, hating themselves so deeply that they would do unimaginable things in order to stay in this level of perfection that they had been given. So I had a really interesting experience over my early part of my life with seeing the mental illness that comes around the disconnection from the body. But I also had my own experience. Whilst I never had anything of an eating disorder, I did go way too heavy into drugs in my earlier years, and I was not looking after my body properly at all. And it took me to unravel from all of those experiences and to become a mother of my own and have these births where I am fully exposed and in my body, to just come to this level of deep appreciation for my physical body, like how miraculous it is that it has been through so much, full-time ballet, which is really intense, this model culture and this bizarre world that I was in where, being sick was seen as being beautiful. Luckily, I never really had to experience that. I just I saw the mental world of it all and experienced that, which was really bizarre. And then my births just gave me this experience of, wow, I've put my body under a lot of pressure over my life, but I've come into a state of healing where it is completely in its own mastery. Like my body is actually just in its own mastery. And I can just, as a woman, it's like, it's the most important thing is breastfeeding, being with my babies. Like there's nothing around like the beauty standards or the the need to look a certain way that matters anywhere near what being available for my babies and my kids are with my physical self. So I've come to just this level of deep appreciation for how strong I am physically. Like especially that twin free birth, I was flying afterwards. I was just like, wow, my body has been through so much. And then yet again, it just did the most amazing thing. It blows me away.
You were flying? How, in what way?
I was so high. Like I felt like I was just
double oxytocin.
I was just tripping out. I was so tripping out. For the first couple of days after I had the twins, I had a bit of a hormonal wave where, I was in the bed at night on the second night and I just had these two babies and I was just like, all of a sudden, like the reality of having 5 kids came down on me and I was like, oh my goodness, why has this happened? Like, I don't know if I'm like available for this, like 5 kids, it's so much responsibility, like I just had this full wave of shock. It was shocked essentially that I'd just had 2 babies. But after that, after I kind of came more into this hormonal equilibrium and, was feeding both babies, and I just stayed in bed for weeks and we just were in the most lush place as a family. So I just felt like I was high and I was so inspired in my postpartum that my business grew so big. Like my business started before when I was pregnant with my babies. There was me, my business partner, and 2 other people working for us. And over that period of time, over my pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, we have 17 people working for us. So my business and my life was just like absolutely peaking. So yeah, it was a wild experience, but amazing. Amazing.
I love that. And where do you think that energy comes from? Like, would you say that's just the triumph of having gone through this challenge and these portals and coming out the other side? Or how else would you describe it?
I would definitely say I've seen a reoccurring theme with women who have had wild pregnancies and free births. The energy transmission that they can gather from the world and the universe once they've had their baby is just unlike anything that you could put words around. It's just like a level of empowerment that can just skyrocket you, like it's hard to explain. It's like it's hard to put words to, but I have seen it happen with other friends of mine who have had a totally wild pregnancy and free birth, that they just come out of it, and it's like there's a level of trust within themselves, a level of trust within the process, that they seem to have just more grit and tenacity to show up for life and their big dreams. And I think that's what real sovereignty is, and real sovereign expression, and the power of a woman. And I would say that this is why it has been suppressed, because if there were a lot of women out there who were birthing in this way, then it would be quite an unstoppable force.
Agreed.
Because there is just something that happens. And I would say it's not only for myself. I saw my partner. I've actually seen him over the history of birth change him for all of his experiences that he had. So he has a son before me and him got together, and that was a hospital birth, and it was quite traumatic. And that really damaged his relationship and also just his own mental health. And then I saw him reclaim something of himself with our first home birth, because he had this wave of, okay, like I trust in the nature of life. He had this kind of awakening of, okay, well, I trust in that. And then over each consecutive birth that has been gone in the way in which it has really well, he has opened up. And I noticed when we had this pre-birth, it just landed him somewhere different, you know. So it's not just the experience available for the woman, it's like the man also, there is an energy that you can tap into that's available for real empowerment when we are given the grace of being in our own family dynamic and having birth. You know, it can just, and even my kids actually, you know, I will say I am so grateful that they have been at each birth, and especially this one, because not only did they get to see a miracle happen, they got to see a baby come who was not necessarily landed on earth. They got to see the deep trust in life. They got to be in that whole scenario in the absolute kind of gobsmack of, oh my God, there's two. And they have just been the most beautiful siblings to their twins. It was like, there was no meltdowns about new babies coming or anything. Like, we were all just so high on life and being with these two new souls that had made a massive ripple, because when they landed, you know, and I shared about it, it was just a huge ripple of light that went out, you know, because people were just so blown away that you could have twins sovereignly, because we're up against so much. And I didn't expect this reality to come to me, but because I hadn't thought about it much, but it threw me into the world of, oh my goodness, there is a real agenda about keeping twins separate, and there is something really wrong with the medical institution when it comes to twin birth, you know, because I saw the auric imprint that was happening with my twins together. So after I gave birth to them, and we had them, you know, I had this really strong maternal instinct that they needed to stay together. I felt almost like it was more important to keep them together than to keep me with them. Like, it was, I just could see how important their little auric bodies were together as twins. And that sent me in those first couple of days into such a deep grief about the reality of twin birth, especially in Australia, because twins mostly in Australia are induced at 37 weeks. They more often than not end up in humidity cribs separate from one another. Their cords are cut immediately from each other. So when my babies were born, they had a cord each, but it was fused. Their placentas were fused together. So even though I had fraternal twins, boy and girl, they should have two separate placentas, but for some reason my placentas were fused, so they were really close. And we spent those first, I'm going to actually literally say 9 months of their life, but those very first few days, like, they were never separate. They were completely together, cuddled up in this like little womb outside of my actual body together. And I could just see how unbelievably important that was for their soul. I can't describe it. I don't think it's hard to describe unless you've experienced twins when they're born. But yeah, it sent me into a deep grief about what is actually happening in a lot of twin births out there. And I think there's a statistic of something around 70% of twin parents have postnatal depression. And I'm just not surprised why.
Because they see what's happened, or they're part of that.
Well, they're part of the separation and they're part of the trauma. They don't often get to have a totally sovereign pregnancy. There is a lot of fear around about babies getting big, twins not being able to get to full term. There shouldn't be a natural birth that babies being born backwards is wrong, and that shouldn't happen. There's a lot. And then even I had some hospital midwives reach out to me when they saw me take videos of my twins wrapped up in bed together, and they said, oh, that's actually really dangerous. They'll suffocate each other and they'll die. We see that happen in the hospital. And I was just like, no, it's absolutely not true. Like, they're meant to be in this auric bubble together. Like, I just knew it. It's deep in my bones. And even my partner and my kids, they felt it. It was just like, no, this is like, they need to be together just in this little world. It was a surreal experience. One I feel so deeply grateful for experiencing the magic of twins. And it's just given me a fire to share with twin parents, just hopefully that even if they have to have a hospital birth, they can fight for the rights of their twins a bit more to stay together.
Right. That's beautiful. Oh, there's so much richness in all of your sharing. Thank you, Emma.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love sharing the story. It is so surreal, and it's feeling really close to me right now because they are going to be one at the beginning of November, and it just feels so surreal that portal happened, but it's one that I will carry with me forever, and one that I'm so grateful I'll be able to share with them about their kind of magical coming. And this, how I shared at the beginning that I thought the baby was really secretive. Phaedra is not at all secretive. She is absolutely a live wire. She is fully present she loves people. She can be picked up by strangers. She's like completely content, being very confident. Halo is deeply sensitive. He loves to just be purely with me or my partner, very sensitive to other people's energies. And he's the secretive baby. He's the surprise, secretive energy that I was picking up that whole time, but not actually realizing that it was two beings that were there.
And you're traveling with them right now. Tell us a little bit about that. You're traveling with 5 children, including 2 under the age of 1.
Yeah. Oh, it's actually so amazing. So with my business, I work completely online. I'm actually launching right now one of our main products, Reconnected Parenting. But that has given me the opportunity to travel. So we went through Indonesia first. Now we're in Thailand, and we're just, I don't know, just on a journey. We haven't really put much thought into where we're going next, but it's just beautiful. I radically unschool my kids, so they are just living through learning, and it has been a profoundly rich experience traveling with them, and the learning that we're getting, just even culturally, language, the very real disparity of wealth versus poverty, the beauty of religion. We are smack bang in the middle of Muslim mosques, Buddhist temples, Christian churches, and it feels like such a deep learning experience for them. And even though the older ones are 9, 7, and 5, I have just witnessed how much of an epic experience they're getting by bursting out of the bubble of our very comfortable reality in the northern rivers of Australia, because I come from a very, a bubble. It's a beautiful, stunning place, so lovely, but not a lot going on culturally. So it's been a epic experience, and one that I'm not ready to give up yet. I'm like, where do we go next? What do we do?
I love that freedom that's available to everybody every step of the way, through pregnancy, through birth, through childhood. That's also part of the conditioning about what like keeping tethered to the medical system, keeping tethered to old ideas of what birth is meant to be, and the trauma that people try to program it to be, and tethered to a school system, tethered to a neighborhood, all the tethering information that we get, and then breaking free from that. It's great.
Yeah, well, there's no better chance to do it now. The world is so open. I feel so grateful because in my bones, I've always kind of been an anti-authority person. It's just a part of me. And so I feel so grateful that my life has opened up to, it's very easy to live like this now. Like, it's so easy to have an online business that affords you to stay home with your kids, to be available for them, to stay home out of the school system. Even when I come up against moments where I think, well, I want this for them, as long as I set that intention, it starts to become into fruition. It starts to become available. And the more that I want for them, the more that it just starts to become available. So we are just so lucky and so blessed about the times that we're in. As crazy as they are, if we are on a polarity planet, the level of freedom that's available to us is very real. So, yeah.
I love that. It's so inspiring and a great place to wrap up. Thank you, Emma. It was fantastic to hear all of that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
These free pregnancy and free birthing stories are some of my favorites. What these women describe and experience truly is the pinnacle of what it is to have been born into a female body. The things that Emma talks about as part of her journey are in my Sexy Mama salon, and the overall themes of self-autonomy and sexual self-knowledge are in there, as well as in all of my salons. Sexy Mama dives deep into all things healing, reprogramming, and reclaiming of this power that lies within everyone. Remember the Anami guarantee: every woman can have an orgasmic, sovereign birth. In my 8-week online Sexy Mama salon, we cover everything from preconception to fertility to blissful pregnancy, orgasmic birth, euphoric postpartum. That's another myth that's out there, this idea of postpartum depression, which is actually the trauma of having a difficult birth, and early childhood in a renegade Anami style way. You will have weekly Q&A sessions with me and access to our Inner Circle community members forum that share all of our vast member resources. The salon is open for registration now. You can go to kimanami.com, look for Sexual Savant Salons, and click on Sexy Mama. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, subscribe and also leave a review. And send someone else the gift of a healthy libido and an off-the-charts love life by sharing this episode with them. We'll be back next week, and in the meantime, many happy orgasms.